Does the Calgary market make sense right now to invest in? Right now, it's no secret that the pre-construction market in Ontario, and in particular the GTA, is in an absolute mess. Prices have come down. Investors are scared. Uh, there's defaults happening, so it's a bad state of affairs. Let's just to put it politely right now in Ontario and in the GTA for pre-construction. So there is some kind of sentiment, that it's going to be years until the pre-construction market comes back in Ontario and the GTA for investors, that is. But what I want to talk about is Calgary, the Calgary investment market, the Calgary pre-construction market, in particular Alberta. It's something that I've been talking about since I want to say 2019 at least. And I've had so many investors buy in Calgary. So right now, for me personally, as an investor, as a 20-year landlord, 20-year, real estate investor, and helping countless people buy investment real estate in Ontario and Alberta, when it comes down to a rental property, an income property in Ontario, if it's pre-construction, those days are, I don't want to say over, they're on hold indefinitely. Um, if you're an investor with capital and you are, you know, starting to feel confident again in 2025 and beyond, what do you do? Where do you put your capital? I still feel that Calgary and Alberta is a good option for a variety of factors. I met today with a friend and fellow colleague who is a realtor in Calgary, very experienced on the investment side, works with a number of key developers in Calgary. And we were having a chat really about the market and kind of what's going on. So when we look towards 2025, and again when interest rates start to come down, that's a key point. Interest rates, right? When interest rates continue to come down, investor confidence will continue to increase, and that's what's needed, that's what's required in order for the pre-construction market, the investment market, to really come back. So we need to see obviously a continual downward trajectory with regards to interest rates. That's really important. Number two, which is really important, is we want to look at the word appreciation, right? Um, Now, it's no secret, for people who've been buying in Ontario as a real estate investor, they've seen friends, family, etc., buy property for years, 10, 15, 20 years, and it's just gone upwards. So you really couldn't lose. But now, specifically with the pre-construction market, because it's taken a hit, because it's come down in Ontario, and we'll talk about Ontario, but specifically like the Greater Toronto area, there's really no prospect of speculation or appreciation, and that's a better word. I would put speculation. And spell that for a second. Um, because people really banked on a property going up when they bought pre-construction, and that's what people were attracted to, that's what people liked, and that's what just kept on going on. But because now we've hit a major rut and the speculation aspect is unknown for investors, people are not going to invest, because if they feel that they can't make money, they're not going to invest their money. So the pre-construction investment market in Ontario and the Greater Toronto area is transforming right now. What it transforms into, we don't really know. In talking to a few developers, excuse me, one thing that a couple of really prominent developers have mentioned to me is this: purpose built rentals. So this is what more developers are going to start going towards: purpose built rentals. And they're not going to be building condo buildings in the foreseeable future. And this is kind of a conversation that is kind of being had behind the scenes with developers because they're looking at their profitability. They're looking at the length of time it takes to complete a project. They're looking at the length of time it takes to get approvals. They're looking at the fall of the market, the drop of the market. So they're in a market where they're seeing, okay, you know what? When we were putting up condo buildings, we were making, a good healthy margin on these builds, but now, it's very uncertain how much we're going to make developers, and it's really becoming not reliable. It's unpredictable. So as such, they're starting to have the conversation about flipping over and building purpose-built rentals. So purpose-built rentals basically being they'll construct a building and they will retain it. They'll own it themselves, the developers, and then they'll rent out these units to renters, to people. So that's what we're seeing kind of happening here in Ontario, the Greater Toronto Area, and that's happening. It has been happening, and it has been going on in Calgary for a little bit of time. Again, Calgary and Greater Toronto Area, completely different worlds with regards to pre-construction, but and they're in different states of affairs. But from a high level, what we're going to see is um, developers in Ontario shifting towards purpose-built rentals and not condos. Now, what we're going to see as well is we're going to see defaults. People are going to default on their pre-construction units. The reason for that is, and I'm talking in Ontario specifically, talking kind of like Ontario and GTA centric. People are going to default because many people who bought pre-construction never intended to actually close on their unit. They thought that, okay, this unit's going to go up in value, and by the time it closes in 3 years, 4 years, it'll have gone up 100K, and I'll be able to sell this and I'll make money and everything is all good. But now with the market coming down, prices declining, um, we're going to see people default because people can't sell it for what they thought it would. They have no exit strategy. Assignment, selling it prior to completion, was their only exit, and now they don't have an exit. So we're going to see increased defaults that are going to happen to purchasers. What I predict, and I'm starting to see this a little bit. I can't spell, sorry. I'm under the gun and I'm trying to spell words. There we go. Blanket appraisal. I should not go into spelling bee. I would fail. So blanket appraisals are an interesting thing, and I think we're going to see more of it now. So what's a blanket appraisal? Okay, so a developer builds a condo building. When the condo building reaches, say, 75% of the sales, that's when the developer gets the construction financing for the actual building. That's when they can start putting a shovel in the ground and digging, because that's when the bank is giving them a loan. Now, as we know, condo buildings take a while to build, and over the course of day one of sales to the actual completion of the building, you know, you name it, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 years plus, give or take. It can take a while, and as such, the markets change. The market that we're in currently, and at the time of recording this, we are November 16th, 2024. The pre-construction market in Ontario has declined when we look at key areas, the Greater Toronto Area. So as such, that's what I was saying earlier is we're seeing defaults, increased defaults happening. Now, blanket appraisals. What are blanket appraisals? Blanket appraisals are basically the bank saying, and let's say, for example, RBC. Let's say RBC gave Builder X a construction loan. Builder X reaches 75% of the sales. They get their loan from RBC and they start building their condo building. Now the market drops in value, which we're in right now. for condos. Now, the developer X needs to pay back the construction loan to RBC, and the builder is seeing increased defaults because values have dropped. People can't get mortgages, so it's a mess. You have the developer X who needs to pay back their construction loan to the bank. You have individual purchasers who are defaulting because values have dropped, so they're not closing on their units. So the developer is not getting paid on those units that they've sold. So it's a complete kind of catastrophe. So what's starting to happen now is the bank is doing a blanket appraisal saying, and they're not saying this, but this is kind of what's implied, is we are going to appraise these units for a certain value, and the value is here. The market may be here, right? So we're going to value the units for 10, right? I'm just using simple numbers. We're going to value every unit. We're going to appraise every unit at 10, but the market may be at a value of 2. We know that, we understand that, but we're doing a blanket appraisal on this building and encouraging purchasers to get financing through their particular bank so that they can get a mortgage and then they can close on their unit. So the developer X completes the transactions. They have the purchasers that fulfill their contract, that get their mortgages. The developer X gets paid, and as such, developer X can then pay back their construction loan to the bank, and in this case, it's RBC. So that's what's starting to happen now with blanket appraisals because the values have dropped, and it's kind of like a domino effect. It's a house of cards that is potentially falling. So my prediction is that we're going to see more of these blanket appraisals happen. I'm starting to see it in Calgary, and I'm starting to see it in. I haven't seen it yet in the GTA, but I know it's going to start to happen in the GTA because this whole system is built on developers selling units, investors buying them, and then producing the rental stock for the market so people can rent, and the banks getting paid back their money from developers. If part of the system falters, then this whole system, this whole house of cards falls. So that can't happen. that can't happen. They won't let it happen. Right? So banks, developers, the ones that have the power to kind of control and influence things, they're not going to let it collapse. The person who's getting squashed in this is the individual investor who over leveraged themselves. And that's no different than any market. Any market that we're in, if somebody over leverages themselves and when the tide goes out, they get wiped out. And that is not specific to this market that we're in. That applies in every single market. And that's a fundamental as an investor. If you're somebody who's a real estate investor, if you're somebody who's interested in investing, one of the pillars is you can't over leverage yourself, because when you over leverage yourself, that's when you can get wiped out. So the long story short here is I see promise still within Alberta, still within the Calgary real estate market. From an investment point of view, I feel that once confidence comes back into the marketplace, we're going to see investors start to buy again in Calgary. They still are buying now in Calgary. In Ontario, completely different story with regards to investors. The investors segment with pre-construction in Ontario is on hold. Nobody in their right mind is buying in Ontario an investment property pre-construction. Owner occupied, that's a different story, and that makes sense. If somebody's buying pre-construction in a particular area, particular building, particular developer, that 100% still makes sense. And we're seeing that, parents buying for their kids, downsizers, buying in boutique buildings like on the lake, in the Greater Toronto area. That's still happening every day. But the investor segment, somebody who's buying it to rent it out to speculate. That is on hold indefinitely in Ontario. And we're going to see the Calgary market pick up again. Investors are going to start moving back in there again. We're going to see this happen from all over Canada, whether BC. I had investors from Quebec that bought in Alberta over the past couple of years. We're going to see more and more people buy in Calgary once interest rates continue to come down again. And one hugely important point that I haven't even touched on, and perhaps we'll cover this in the next video, is the landlord and tenant laws in Alberta heavily favor the landlord, and they're not in favor of the tenant, which makes Alberta and Calgary very appealing for investors, because places like Ontario that are heavily in favor of the tenant, landlords are fed up. They're sick and tired of dealing with ridiculous situations where they have no rights and they have to wait a year in order to evict a non-paying tenant. The system is broken in Ontario for landlords, but Alberta, it is much more in favor of the landlord. It's fair for the landlord, and it makes Alberta and Calgary a place where people want to invest. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions at all, feel free to get in touch. My contact details will be around here somewhere, maybe in the description or below this video. But thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.